Hello and welcome to the Rough Idea podcast. We're doing episodes 3 times every fortnight and on a rolling set of topics. And this week's episode, or today's episode, is Magic the Gathering. I'm Yoshi.
I'm Nick.
And I'm John.
Aha.
Okay, so it's been a while since we did a Magic podcast, so there's a lot of stuff we can talk about at the moment.
By a while, you mean like literally months.
Well, we didn't even talk about Kaladesh.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard Kaladesh came out. Is that true?
No, Kaladesh got cancelled.
This new set or anything?
Got cancelled.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, Kaladesh... I don't have that much to say about Kaladesh that most people won't already know, because it's been, like, 2 months now or something?
Yes.
We're due a spoiler season soon, aren't we?
Probably.
No, probably
Well,
not
in
for,
like
like,
a,
another month or
but
something.
a month is
probably.
relatively soon.
Yeah, late December, I
A month
think.
is kind of soon.
But Kaladesh is fucking beautiful.
It is my favorite art of any set ever, I think.
I specifically went out of my way, so like went to GP London, didn't play the main event. I went out of my way to trade for the Inventors Fair playmat. It's the like promo Inventors Fair art with Chandra and Liliana looking down, and it is beautiful.
Nice.
It's so good. Only playmat where I've actually been like, no, I need this. I will trade for this, because normally I'm just like, whatever. It's just like
It's just a playmat. Just makes you look elitist.
But this playmat, oof.
But this one is beautiful.
Yeah.
I needed it. Yeah, Kaladesh was a thing. Fun format, really cool stuff.
Limited was fun.
Was very surprised. Yeah, like just I love the new standard as well. Well, I did for a bit.
And then they changed it.
Yeah, no, it kind of
Was solved.
stabilized. Yeah, kinda. I'm not a fan of Delirium, and I'm not a fan of Blue-White Flyers. I guess that's more personal preference than anything else, but those are the two, like, premier decks.
Yeah.
But, like, the limited format, is really, really interesting. And just the card design is really cool. It tries a lot of really weird, different stuff. And I like that. It means that there's more experimentation. It means there's more, like, weird, potentially broken stuff in a good way. Like,
In a fun, breakable way. It doesn't completely
There's
destroy everything.
potentially broken stuff where you kind of have to work to break it, and then there are still like dedicated answers to those things. And I like that. That's a really interesting format. Plus I like doing weird over-the-top combos and shit like that, so of course I'm gonna like that.
I'm having flashbacks to our discussion about, what was it, the flicker for infinite stuff?
Do you mean the...
Infinite value flickering. The
limited flicker value. Yeah, there's a limited infinite combo where you get the 6 mana Wispreaver Angel, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Which is the one that, when it enters, flicker something. And then you've got...
There's a card to cast something twice when on enter of the battlefield effects, is it? Something like that.
Oh, there's Panharmonicon. There's Panharmonicon as well. That's No, there's the Angel goes with... There's a card that basically says whenever a creature enters, you gain energy, I think it is.
Oh, yeah.
And you basically get 2 of those, or 2 of the Angel and 1 of those, and the Angels flicker each other, and you gain infinite energy.
Seems fun.
And then there's a billion things you can do with that. Someone I know managed that in a draft in like the first week the set was out, and I loved it.
Yeah. I can see why.
Yeah, weird format.
But a good
You
one.
say weird, but like the real word is fun. Like there's some really
Exactly.
fun
Both.
stuff you can do.
Absolutely both, yeah. However, weirdly, they haven't been focusing on Standard at all recently. And I do think Standard has some really cool decks. I tried playing Seasons Past. It worked for a bit, and then it stopped working.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you're
the
like...
metagame, as the metagame shifted, it shifted in a way that I didn't want it to, basically. It went away from vehicles, Delirium, and like aggressive mid-rangey decks towards weird combo-y shit. I lose to Colossus and I lose to Aetherworks Marvel. Both of those just killed me. Turns out, Aetherworks Marvel is actually really funny. The first time I played against it, I managed to get through 2 Emrakuls and an Ulamog, all exiled, and then lost to the second Ulamog.
The second Ulamog, of course.
See, that just like reminds me of what was it? The game Owen Turnwald had like way back on a Pro Tour where he had to go through
was that the
Emrakuls to win?
Oh, more than that, I think. I think it was 6.
Something like that. It was stupid. It was stupid.
Back.
Like he played a lot of Emrakuls and only won after like several
such a good
plays.
Game.
But yeah,
that was honestly like the best game I've ever seen, to be honest. But no, recent tournaments have been lots of limited, which makes sense. You know, we're saying Kaladesh has a cool limited format and all that, and lots of modern. I do want to touch on 2 decks in particular that have come out recently. So one of them lots of people know about, and the other one people know about the card but not so much the deck. It's a cool thing. So the first one is a modern deck, which is Scred Red.
Scred Red.
Probably one of the better names I've heard.
Definitely.
So like, this definitely drew attention, I think, because it was a completely rogue deck that just came in and won a GP out of fucking nowhere. I don't think the deck is actually amazing. I will say that now. I think it was a very good metagame call. I don't think it's going to be a contender going forwards. But basically...
So speaking as someone who looked at the Scred Red list and thinking, what the heck? How does this deck do what it does?
Scred.
Yeah, so
basically... Scred. I get Scred.
Scred 1 mana kill spell.
Scred.
Easy game.
I can't even... Oh my god. I lost to Scred Red at GP London in one of the side events and I was so angry. Turns out when I pay 6 mana for a fucking Primeval Titan and they go 1 mana instant kill, I get very annoyed.
It's like, I feel like this shouldn't happen, but that's what's happening.
But basically, so Scred Red is a deck that accelerates out into, or sometimes accelerates out. This version, the one that won, actually doesn't accelerate into it, but whatever. It plays Blood Moon. It's a Blood Moon deck, above all else. So your non-basics are now mountains. You can't tap for whatever colours you wanted to tap for. Keeping in mind there were 2 3-colour control decks in the top 8. Scred is really good against those. Admittedly, one of the colours is red in each, but not the point. But basically, you lock them down with things like Blood Moon and, like, you just have little hate cards here and there. Anger of the Gods is really good right now because exiling a bunch of creatures is nice.
Yep.
Relic of Progenitus, same thing. Pirate Spellbomb is just that nice little bit of, like, extra reach that also is a removal spell early on. It's also really good to flip off the new Chandra, which is a one-of in the deck, which just does so much work because she's 4 mana, 4 damage to something, and also feeds into your game plan elsewhere. And then basically the idea is that you lock up the game with a decent board state and little bits of removal, and then you get Koth, and you ultimate Koth. And all your lands are mountains, and so Koth basically ultimate is your mountains can ping things. And so you ping away all their creatures and then just start pinging them. The really revolutionary thing about this list wasn't Scred Red. It wasn't just, like, playing the deck, and it wasn't the Chandra. The real, like, breakout here was Eternal Scourge in this list. So this came out of, I think it was Eldritch Moon. And it was a card that kind of just people ignored because it was pretty crap. You can cast it from exile, it's a 3 mana 3/3, and if it ever becomes targeted, it exiles itself. And then you can recast it, and then it exiles itself, and so on and so forth. If it ever dies in combat, it goes to your graveyard. This is another reason why Anger of the Gods and Relic of Progenitus are in the deck. You can tap Relic of Progenitus, target yourself, exile your Eternal Scourge, and then replay it from exile.
That's excellent.
And your Anger automatically exiles it anyway, so you can get it back from your own exile from doing that. And it's just a repeated blocker. It just keeps coming in and blocks and sits there and then eventually beats down. And that is your, like, one of your win cons, and it's just a really durable threat. And I think that's amazing. I love seeing like niche cards really just turn up and do well.
I mean, Stormbreath wasn't seen that much either, right? Hasn't been. Rather.
Stormbreath in Modern has not existed.
Yeah.
There's a deck very similar to this in Legacy, but it is firstly not a very good deck, and secondly, even then it only plays 2 Stormbreaths, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, this took a GP, and like I say, I don't think it's going to be a deck going forwards, but it was just a really, really interesting metagame call, and it really goes to show what people can do when they look to attack a format, as opposed to just going, okay, what's working?
Yeah, what is good right now? I'm going to play that.
Yeah, like, not just that, it isn't like right now, so Infect and Dredge and slower decks are becoming better as well. So I know I said Infect and Dredge and then slower decks, they're very different things. But basically the format is getting very, very linear, as in there are very dedicated focused strategies, and then there are decks that attack those strategies on the whole, which are the control decks. And people kind of go, okay, what's good against these, and look at the decks that are top of the metagame, and Scred Red wasn't anywhere in a metagame ever. Scred Red was just someone going, okay, fuck it, here's a fun deck that I like, also it's good right now, also it's really good against the metagame, and nobody picks up on it. And the fact that nobody else has played it means that it's actually better to attack the format with, because you're not going to get picked up on by the rogue bits of hate that are sitting around. There's been no affinity in the top 8 for a while, but people are still going to have affinity hate because it's one of those decks.
Because if you don't have direct answers for it, then you're in trouble.
Right. I'm looking actually, and yeah, even this deck has 2 Shattering Sprees in the board. Like, you need it. You need to have affinity hate in every deck. The other deck that I want to mention, so the list I've got is from a Magic Online tournament, Vintage Premier. So, vintage deck. And like, so for those who don't know Vintage is a very fast, very aggressive format.
Very weird format too.
Right. It is very, very controlling, in that you've got Mental Misstep as an option, so 1 mana or 2 life, counter target 1 mana spell, and when you've got 1 mana draw 3 cards as an instant, that's pretty good. And so a lot of matches become Mental Misstep your 1 mana spell, Mental Misstep your Mental Misstep. And every deck, generally, unless it's like a super dedicated game plan, will play 4 Mental Missteps, or at least some number of them.
Because of Phyrexian mana is good.
And broken.
Yeah.
Hate it. And then Force of Will is also there as well. And then you've got things like lots of digging, lots of card draw, lots of basically good control elements that refill your hand, and lots of fast mana to let you do it. And that is basically Vintage as the format, is fast mana and decent control. So this deck does all of that. It plays 10 lands. Vintage tends to be either really high or really low on lands. This one is like quite low. But that's because it plays all the artifact mana. It plays Black Lotus, it plays all of your Moxen, it plays 4 Mox Opals, which don't see that much play in Vintage, but 4 of definitely not, because it's legendary.
Yep.
Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal even. It's got a lot of acceleration that you just wouldn't expect. It played 2 Paradoxical Outcome.
Yeah, that's the card I saw. And I was like, that is super cool. Tell us about Paradoxical Outcome.
Vintage playable. So Paradoxical Outcome was from Kaladesh. It's 4 mana instant. Return any number of permanents you control to their owner's hands, and then draw a card for each permanent returned this way. In Vintage in particular, where you've got all this 0 mana acceleration, you're like, okay, I'll play out like 2 Moxen or whatever, Mox Opal, Soul Ring is 1 mana and taps for 2, sure. And then I'm going to pay 4 and Paradoxical Outcome it all back, generate mana in doing so, and then replay it all and have even more mana and have drawn like 5 cards.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
I love it. So much of Kaladesh is being played in Vintage. Inventor's Fair has seen play in Vintage.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
Girapa Orrery has seen play in Vintage, and I love that. The Metalwork Colossus has started seeing play. Not very much, but it has seen some play. Like the Foundry Inspector, or whatever it's called, the 3-mana 3/2 that says your artifacts cost 1 less.
Yeah.
That's seen play in Vintage. I even saw a couple of lists with Glintnest Crane. Like, Kaladesh as a set has impacted Vintage more than probably anything since, like, New Phyrexia.
Yeah. And that's always fun to see. It's always nice when these new sets have, like, this amazing format. 'Cause you never really know, sort of, when spoiler season starts, how much Kira per Orrery is gonna... Because of the surface of it, you're like, this is probably just some junk rare that's going to go into some jank, but Vintage likes it.
Like, I'd heard about a paradoxical outcome deck in Standard, which was the Cheerios... I can't remember the name of the card now, but the Aetherflux Reservoir. It's the one where whenever you play a spell, you gain life equal to the number of spells you played. So the idea is you play a bunch of 0-mana equipment, paradoxical outcome them back, play a bunch more,
gain a lot
and
life.
then the reservoir lets you shoot them for 50. And so I knew there was a paradoxical outcome deck, but I thought it was like a gimmicky standard deck that wouldn't go anywhere past that. But no, Vintage really wants this card. Girapa Orrery was a card that we looked at and was like, it's terrible, like, why would anyone play this? But no, in Vintage, it's really good because you can empty your hand really, really easily. It's being played in Vintage Stacks, which is like a prison sort of deck. And one of the cards it's also playing in that deck as a one-of is like, I can't remember how much mana it is. It's like 3 or 4 mana. But basically, during your end step, you exile your hand face down.
Mm-hmm.
And then during your upkeep, you return it. So you don't have your hand during your opponent's turns.
Right.
Sure.
Is the idea. But Girapa Orrery triggers during each upkeep, I think it is, or like during your opponent's upkeep. So you exile your hand, and then Orrery triggers, and you draw 3 cards.
And you have a blast.
Also, they run Ensnaring Bridge, so nothing can attack them. It's such a ridiculous thing. And, like, yeah, it just showed up when nobody was really expecting it, which is cool. I love looking at these formats, and I love that they're really shifting with new sets. And I think, actually, weirdly, like, Magic, from a design perspective, has been very creature-focused for the last few years. Going back, like, 15, 20 years, there was a point where spells were super dominant. And it's shifted the other way, and I almost think we're at the point where it's going to balance out. I think we're getting to the point now where the creatures now can compete with the spells from back then.
Yeah, because I feel like coming into this game, like 2-3 years ago, it was very much... Everything felt a little, low on the power when compared to, the modern powerhouses and the legacy and the vintage powerhouses. I never really saw, like, oh man, the new cards, they're not really ever going to go into those decks. This is just, like, from an old time. And now it's really nice seeing everything sort of slowly climb... that is reaching, not quite. Obviously most of these are the Mox Opals and the Moxes, but still, it's awesome.
Legacy more than Vintage.
Yeah.
But, like, so, like, Khans of Tarkir had Siege Rhino, which was super powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a 4-mana beta. Like, it's not going to see play outside of, like, Standard and maybe Modern. Because Legacy, a 4-mana 4/5 with some abilities that just are aggressive, isn't going to do anything. Like, that is not a good creature for Legacy. That is not playable in Vintage. Like, that's never going to get there. But Kaladesh in particular has introduced a lot of very, very powerful stuff. And Oath of the Gatewatch introduced some very powerful stuff with the Eldrazi.
Yeah.
Obviously, Thought Not Seer has been seen play in every format. Reality Smasher has seen play in every format. Matter Reshaper. Eldrazi Mimic has seen some play,
Displacer.
less. Displacer, some, yeah. Not in Vintage, but the others, yes.
What about Elder Deep Fiend?
The new... No, Elder Deep Fiend is very much... So there was some talk of it in a Legacy deck at one point, but I don't think it ever panned out. And there was someone looking at it for Modern... Oh, God, what was it? Modern... Tron. It was a Tron deck. It was Mono Blue Tron. But I don't know really whether that actually worked out. And Tron decks... Yeah, like, Blue Tron hasn't been performing, basically. And to be fair, Blue Tron was always just budget Tron.
Yeah.
More than anything. That said, I do love the way Modern is at the moment. And that brings us very nicely to what's coming up this weekend. So, this coming weekend, we've got the Magic World Cup. There are, I think it was 73 countries in this tournament. And basically, they'll compete in 2 different formats. It's teams of 4, so it'll be the best performing player from that country, and then 3 winners of World Magic Cup qualifiers from that country. And each round, 3 people play, and 1 person kind of spectates and coaches. Everyone's allowed to discuss freely between plays and things like that. There's no kind of like... there's no rules for like outside interference within your team. And the important part of this is, so there's, like I say, 2 formats, Team Sealed, Unified, Modern. Now, Team Sealed, people got a glimpse of last weekend at GP Rotterdam, which, as a thing, GP Rotterdam, I really like seeing European GPs having all European finals. That was quite a cool thing to see.
Yeah, just nice.
I was actually rooting for a team that didn't have all European players, but that's not the point. There was a team that was like 3 big name pro players, who 2 of them I'm a big fan of. It was Shahar Shenhar, Andre Strasky, and Paolo Vita Damarosa, which is a hell of a team. But they got to top 4 and then lost.
Well, I mean, oh well.
Yeah, they lost to the overall winners. Like, it was an Italian team that won.
So that means they get second, technically, right? That's how that works, right?
No. When I say no, they got to the top 4 teams. They technically get third.
Yeah, but they lost to the winner, so technically, it's
technically they're third, and the team that lost in the team that lost in the finals is second.
Oh, all right, fine.
But yeah, like, that's kind of gave a glimpse into what Team Limited is like. And Team Sealed, basically, you get 12 boosters, and you build 3 40-card decks using those.
Fun.
So, like, obviously there's a lot more kind of, like, splitting up, like, okay, we're in these colours, we're in these colours, we're in these colours, what goes with what game plan kind of thing. But more importantly, it's a very, very powerful limited format. Because, like... So, like, take blue in Kaladesh. Blue is considered one of the weaker colours.
Yep.
All of your good blue cards go into one deck.
Yep.
So all of the good blue from 12 boosters...
It's a lot of good blue, hopefully.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it ends up being a very, very powerful format, and it's really fun to watch because it shows you some of the crazy interactions you can have with Limited in this format as well. The other side of the World Magic Cup, and this is the part that I'm definitely more interested in, is Unified Modern. And so there's a lot we can probably talk about here. So for those who don't know, Unified Modern... So the standard deck building rules, you have your 60-card deck and a 15-card sideboard, and you're only allowed up to 4 copies of any non-basic, or any card that isn't a basic land. Unified Modern is the same thing. So you have your 3 60-card decks and your 3 15-card sideboards, but across all of that, you aren't allowed more than 4 copies of any card that isn't a basic land. And that creates, like, a really interesting dynamic, because you have to kind of, like, mix and match. You can't just go, okay, this is the best deck in Modern, we'll all play it. because obviously, like, if the best deck is Infect, well, you can't all play 4 Glistener Elves, and the deck won't work if you like play 1.
No, each one gets 1 Glistener Elf, and then the chosen deck gets 2.
Yeah, if someone gets 2 of them, is really, really lucky.
Yeah, that's the good deck.
But it creates a really interesting dynamic, because you've got to like almost compete for cards and pick different things that do different things. So like Infect is a really good choice for one of your decks.
Yeah.
Because no other deck wants the pump spells and wants the Infect creatures. But then everyone else knows that Infect is a really good choice, so they build hate for Infect.
And then you're like, well, this isn't good.
Right.
Malira is less good that way. Oh, sorry, Malira is better.
So it creates this really interesting metagame shift where suddenly people move away from Infect because everyone's gunning for it, and I'm really interested to see what decks show up, and I really want like a rogue deck to appear because it'll attack the field well.
Just some weird like deck, like something that's sort of out of the ordinary. Maybe even like a cool monocolor deck. I think would be really interesting because it means that your other 2 decks can be super powerful, sort of in their own way. You know, give it maybe a Jeskai and then as an Infect, and then the other one mono, something. Just have really cool stuff.
Right. Yeah. So the main things, like as far as monocolor decks go, like the main ones that come to mind are Scred Red, but you don't really want red because every deck in the format right now.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at, you're like, more accurately, your linear decks in the format, the ones that won't be competing for cards elsewhere. You've got Burn as an option that wants red. You've got the slower decks like Jund. Jund will want some red at least, and Lightning Bolts definitely.
I mean, if you're red, you're probably playing Lightning Bolt at this point.
True, yeah. But I could see Scred Red maybe. Merfolk is a very good monocolor option.
Yeah, I think that was honestly the one I saw being one of the better ones.
And the other one that comes to mind is a kind of Death and Taxes Hate Bears kind of thing.
Like a white-green kind of thing. Or white.
Yeah, it can just be mono-white. Or it could be like a white Eldrazi deck as well.
Make a white Angels deck. It's not going to be good, but just make a white Angels deck.
That'd be sweet.
Don't think that's the thing.
Throw some Soul Rings in there. That's loud, right?
Yes. No, wait. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I think Affinity would be a bit good with.
Oh god, yes.
Affinity as a thing is another one of the decks that's really good for this because again, nothing else competes for it.
And of course, everyone knows that.
Yeah. What I actually expect, so if I was doing something like this, what I think I'd be going for is something along the lines of Abzan, Burn, and Merfolk.
Yeah.
I'd consider a Tron in there, maybe.
That seems good. A Tron, what kind? Like green-red Tron, or a blue Tron, or...?
Probably green-red, yeah. You want it to be at least red, and the green just... Like the Sylvan Scryings and Ancient Stirrings, like Abzan isn't going to care about those anyway. So go Merfolk, Abzan, and then Green Red Tron. I could see. This is the point. There are so many options and so many ways to do it. You can go for like super linear combo decks. Something like so there's like the Angel's Grace Ad Nauseam, or I guess Death Shadow is always an option. Death Shadow is just one of the best decks in the format.
Yeah, the Death Shadow Suicide deck, yeah.
Yeah. But, like, there's some really interesting dynamics with that, and I'm really interested to see how, like, people attack the metagame. That's the thing I always love with Magic, is seeing how people challenge a metagame and not just...
play along with
I don't care about... Right. I don't care about, like, the top play as much as... Like, I will happily watch, like... I happily watched Bank Company mirror matches and stuff like that.
You say happily,
but I want to see is the deck list.
I swear I remember you at the time saying, I hate watching Bank Company, it's so boring.
I think what I said is I hate people playing Bank Company. It's really boring.
I see.
I liked watching the games. Watching the Bank Company mirror in the final of the World Championships this year. Yeah. It wasn't quite Bank Company, but Bank Humans with Collected Company versus Bank Company. Watching that mirror was amazing. Amazing matches. But the decks were boring. And like, while it's cool watching the games, it's not like something where I'll go back and be like, this was a really cool thing that stood out as like a shocking thing. Whereas like when Sphinx's tutelage first showed up, that was a shock. Scred Red, that's the sort of thing like that will stand out in my mind as like a really cool tournament. I'm that's what I'm interested in seeing here is like how people adjust to Unified Modern. And also, to be fair, how people adjust to Scred Red winning a GP.
So,
like,
it's a fairly new thing, right, this format? Like, it's not... Has it been done before?
Unified Modern, yeah, it's been done before, but
How much?
It's very rare. It's very, very rare. Okay. I think the last one was 2 years ago.
So that's the thing I like about these sort of meta games, quote unquote, because it's something that's... It's not new, but it's not played a lot, so people haven't really had it on their mind. So these kind of things... The metagame changes so drastically and so quickly, and that's what I think makes it interesting. People need to make those smart calls, like, oh, I need to do this and this, but what if they do that? They might do that because someone else might do this. And it means the metagame develops and shifts, and you get crazy, weird, like, tech cards in sideboards, and it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, obviously, all of the teams will have been testing a lot over the, like, last couple of weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So a lot of that does then run the issue of, like, what decks are people preparing for? Like, have people tested Infect and gone, this is good enough to justify, like, either running, like, specific hate for? Is it easy enough to hate out that it isn't worth playing it?
Yeah.
Or have people just gone, actually, it's good enough and the hate isn't relevant enough, we'll still play Infect?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see is those metagame decisions. That's the bit I love.
I mean, they're always like it's not something that I find exclusive to Magic that's enjoyable to watch. Like there's a lot of anything with like that kind of we're using a slightly different format. And then you go, well that changes everything. And sit there about what should I run? If I'm going to run this, what will other people run? Is it too obvious? Like it's mind games. Mind games are always interesting.
Yeah. Like I say, I think the big choke point as far as the 3 different decks go is mana base.
Yeah.
It's always going to be the mana bases. Fetches are at a fucking premium. Especially if you play Death Shadow. Like, Death Shadow needs the fetches and shocks, and I don't actually expect a Death Shadow deck to show up. I would be surprised if it did, because it would mean that both of the other 2 decks are going to be much, much weaker.
That's fair.
Death Shadow is a Jund deck, I think, yeah. So you're blue-white otherwise, so I guess you could get Merfolk.
Merfolk and...
Death and Taxes? No, because they compete. They compete for cards, because they both want Aether Vials. And, like...
Mono White Tron?
No.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Mono Blue Tron, Death and Taxes.
Yeah.
Death Shadow?
Yeah.
But that's so bad.
Well, it might not be. It'll be one of those. This might turn out to be a lot better than expected.
Well, to be fair, I'm sitting here going, Death Shadow competes with too many things. Nobody would play it. Which makes it a really good metagame call, because nobody will be prepared for it. Like, this is, again, I love these, like, circular arguments that go back on themselves in metagames, and it creates... I love attacking metagames, and, like, this is exactly the kind of format I want to see and want to be, like, almost experimenting with.
Yeah, I'll probably check it out afterwards, because obviously I can't this weekend when it's on, because I'm busy, but I will probably check out some of the games afterwards. Like,
yeah, it's the kind of format, like, with most Magic tournaments, I'll just be like, it's the kind of cool thing, if you're into the format, watch it, whatever. But this one is one where I would say that if you like watching Magic, doesn't matter what format, doesn't matter what you know, this is something that will be interesting to look into, because you will see a lot of variety and a lot of things that you won't see anywhere else that play in very different and very interesting ways.
Yeah.
And Modern as a format right now is interesting anyway, even more so when you're forcing people to play different decks.
Yeah, you'll have to give me like a list of good games to watch afterwards.
I
just to save my
absolutely
time
will.
because I'm lazy. You know how it is.
I'm going to be keeping a lot of notes so that I can rant about them on the
Cool.
next podcast. So
In 4
we'll go
weeks.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, keeping in mind, so you said 4 weeks,
Yeah.
and this is the last episode in our kind of cycle. So it's been 4 weeks since we started up the podcast again. We've got a lot to discuss from the last few months. And one thing that I do want to briefly touch on, even though it's kind of been covered everywhere else, I think it's kind of been exhausted a bit, but I just want to touch on this to get your thoughts. There was a bit of drama in the Magic kind of competitive scene.
Yeah.
Going back a month or so now, there were two big things that happened. So one is Oliver 2, who I think was Rookie of the Year last year,
Yes.
big, like, up-and-coming player, was disqualified in round 15 of a GP. Because his opponent conceded to him, and then outside of the game, completely separate to everything, they were overheard, those two players were overheard discussing PayPal details.
There's a time and a
And
place.
Like,
judges
And that's not
basically
that.
spoke to them and decided that no, it was like collusion or bribery, and disqualified him. And I think he was top 8ing. I think it was like conceded into top 8. But they were just like, no, you're disqualified.
I mean,
Yeah.
so you have to realize when you're in that kind of environment, you have to be very careful with what you say because of this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. If someone hears you talking about, oh, what's your PayPal? Obviously, there's going to be some kind of negative bias
Right.
towards what you're saying, right?
Obviously, there could be like some stuff where it's like, oh, we were doing a trade or we were
Exactly.
selling cards, but even that is illegal, like, or not illegal, but banned in most tournaments.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to sell cards on site
Okay.
because they've got traders in, they've got people selling.
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
want you taking their business. So even that is really bad, and can get you ejected from the tournament, or like the tournament site.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But also, more than anything, I think the fact that this has actually been picked up on and he was disqualified over it, I think this is a major step in the right direction. I like that this happened.
You mean the fact that they
And it's a
actually
shame
caught
because I quite
something?
like Oliver 2 as a player. But
Yeah.
I mean,
the fact that this happened, I'm just like, it makes me like him less, for one.
so if he was cheating, which I'm not saying he was, it was incredibly stupid of him.
Yeah, well,
Like-
Right, yes.
like one thing I'd say about it as well is, have you noticed? Basically, every time something like this happens in any like sport of sorts or competitive game, suddenly it comes out because of something really stupid. Like whoever it was who apparently cheated, if they like bribed someone or whatever, like intentionally through a game, whatever it is for money, like it's always something ridiculous. Like it comes out because like, oh, they were streaming and they just mentioned it by accident or something, just like really stupid stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is like another one of
Yeah.
those things. Like if he was like bribing him, it's like, oh, you'll concede the game, and then like about 5 minutes after the game or whatever, we'll go around the back and just discuss PayPal details, like on site. Doesn't think about like
Yeah.
This is the
waiting
thing.
till after.
There's always a big thing where, like, if you hear somebody talking about payment or anything, or if somebody says, you know, oh, if you concede to me, I'll give you this or
Yeah,
whatever,
report it.
you're meant to call a judge.
Yeah.
And most people do immediately go, no, hold on, I can't allow
Yeah.
that judge. And because people want integrity in the tournament.
Yeah.
People are... There's already been complaints about people fucking intentional drawing into top 8.
Yeah.
Like, that is something they're trying to crack down on. And it's a very difficult one to do, but, like, the fact that people will call that out if you say it at a table. And so there's kind of, like, almost this implicit idea that if you concede somebody into the top 8, it's almost, like, implied that you will get something out of it. And I hate that. I think that's a terrible setup. But the point is, like, that does happen. There's almost this implication that if someone's going into top 8 and you're like,
I'll just concede because it's irrelevant to me, and you're like,
right,
what?
no. It's like you'll be like say something along the lines of, you know, oh, do you want to meet up? We can meet up afterwards and just sort out a trade, or like just trade cards after the game. Oh, I'll concede to you. Completely separate things.
Yeah.
And you can kind of, like, depending on the judge, that's usually fine. But
I mean,
like,
it should be fine, I think.
I think, well, no, but the point is that it's very blatantly saying...
Well, yeah. But I mean, like, I think that sort of thing should still be fine. If they were actually just trying to sort of trade, that should be fine.
But then the point is that afterwards there should be some kind of... Like, you can't monitor everything like that as well. And, like, I think the top 8 players, from the point they hit the top 8, basically need to be... almost like monitored, I guess. It's like once they win into top 8, they should have, like, you know, like they have VIP lounges at tournaments and stuff.
Sure.
They should have a VIP section for the top 8 at that point, like a table off to one side or something, and just to stop any collusion at that point. And I know that's very, very difficult to do, but... And maybe that isn't the solution. To be fair, there isn't really a good solution, but that is an option that does it. But the problem is it's very difficult to kind of monitor every discussion and everything around a top table. So, but there are better ways to do it than to walk away and, like, a few minutes later just be like, oh yeah, give me your PayPal detail. Like, you know, oh, I'll give you my PayPal details and you can throw me the money for a
I mean, they could have just been talking... I mean, with this, they could have just been talking like, oh, I bought your hotel room, you know, I'll just PayPal you later.
Yeah. Right? The judges spoke to them and tried to determine whether they whether it was a bribery or something, and their stories didn't match up.
Oh yeah, there you go. Then.
Oh well, then they're
not exactly going to go. Oh yeah, you're right. I did. I'm going to pay him to concede for me. Sorry about that.
I'm guessing what happened is one of them said, oh yeah, we were, like, figuring out a trade or something, and the other one was like, oh yeah, he lent me money earlier. And they were just like, okay, these are two very different stories.
That's definitely the way to handle it.
Fuck you,
That's
you're
definitely
out.
the right way to handle it, by, like, taking them separately, because otherwise they're just going to lie and be like, yeah, like, we're doing that.
Like I say, I think it's very much a step in the right direction for tournaments. I really hope things like this continue.
I mean, I'd rather it's not that you'd rather they continue, it's that you'd rather they get picked up on.
If people are going to try and, like, basically cheat their way into tournament, like, prizes and victories,
you'd rather people, like, catch them out.
I like the fact that they're getting caught.
Yeah.
I like the fact that people can't get away with doing that. And if there are more high-profile players being caught out on it, because that's the other thing as well. He's a very high-profile player.
Yeah.
And so there is almost this mentality, and in fact there was a big article about it, like, earlier this year or last year or something, from Eric Froelich, which loads of people called out for being the bullshit that it was, where he basically said, if you're a big name player in a top 8 or playing for top 8, you should concede to a big name player because they know everyone in the community and they can reward you more for it.
Nice. Yeah, that's really well.
His argument, it came up at a tournament he was in where somebody was already locked for top 8.
Yeah.
And they refused to ID. They played against him and they beat him.
Oh, yeah.
And eliminated him from top 8. And he basically said, you're already guaranteed top 8. You gain very little from being number 1 seed and from
that was Pro Tour Innistrad, wasn't it?
I don't think so. I think it was around
something like that happened at Innistrad.
Yeah,
it was before that, I think. But
someone could have got an ID to just get into top 8, and they ended up coming up against Finkel, who was like, "No, I'm playing this game. Fuck you. I want to play this game, and I want to win it and become number 1 seed."
No.
Although I think that went the other way.
Was very much like
I think he ended up winning and coming top 8. So
this was an up and coming player, and Finkel is anything but.
Yes, that is true.
But no, this one with the Eric Froelich one, he basically was saying, like, because he was such a kind of recognised member of the community, he now goes, oh, this person didn't help me out.
Yeah, it's kind of like
says that to friends
of his.
It's and like so, kind of
right, and so they will do the same in response. They will, if they go up against him for a top 8, they'll be like, no, I'll play it out because you did the same thing. But that makes sense. That is part of playing the game. Of course, they should play it out.
The bit that's kind of the promoting toxic behavior in the community is the like, oh well, you're a new player, I'm well established, so do this for me, and then I'll help you out a bit. Otherwise, fuck you.
Right.
You're getting fucked, and like we're gonna shut down your
So
entry in the community.
you have
Good players do better. And...
You have to do what we tell you, or we're gonna make your life hell.
Yeah,
like that's not cool.
That. Also, importantly, like it isn't just a case of like, oh, I'll concede to you and you get top 8 and that's it. It's like, no, you get that top 8 position over somebody else.
Yeah.
Who now gets pushed down to 9th when they didn't deserve it. It's not like, it's like if you do things like conceding to top players, it's like the good players get better and the players who are up and coming don't come up. They don't manage to make that jump because they don't get that top 8 they deserved because, oh, I just conceded a big name player in.
Yeah.
Whoops.
It's like, I think one of the things that like, or at least my general opinion on the overall thing anyway, for like conceding to players, like I don't think there's like it's wrong to do it. I think it's very much down to the individual as to whether they want to do it. Because if they want to play out the game, that's fine. If they don't want to play out the game and they're like, well, you really need this win, I don't, and you're like, I'm feeling somewhat generous or whatever, I'll concede or ID or whatever. I think that's fine as well. But like the kind of surrounding like assumptions you should do one or the other, or no, assumptions you should play it out aren't as bad. Like it's the assumptions of the other side that are pretty bad.
Yes, yeah.
The player who is choosing to, potentially concede is the one that, he should be blame-free pretty much, I think, regardless of this situation.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, I'll ID into a top 8 of a tournament if it means... Like, I've ID'd tournaments before where I'm just like, I don't really feel like playing this round. I want a break before we go into the top 8. I can take a draw in this game. It benefits both of us.
Yeah.
And I don't care about playing for seed. I'll just take the draw. Done. And I've done that. One of my friends at a GP early last year, GP Utrecht, they had an issue with the tournament where one of their results got recorded wrong. It was put down as a loss when they'd won. And so it was put down as 5-3 at the point where you needed to go 7-2 to day 2 the GP. And so as far as they knew, as far as the tournament goes, they're eliminated at that point. They cannot make day 2. Except they were actually 6-2.
Yeah.
And so I went and got a judge and was like, one of my friends is in the tournament. It's his first GP. He hasn't noticed this. What can I do? And they were like, you've got to get your friend to come over and talk to us about it. So I did. And I went and got him. And they said afterwards, they were like, we'll fix it on the system. Really keep an eye on this afterwards. We're going to put a note that this has happened. It's different from a warning. But we're going to make a note that this has happened. Don't do it again kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then obviously his opponent is like, well, I'm 5-3 and I can't day 2. You're 6-2 if you win this, you day 2. Fuck it, I'll concede.
Yeah.
Because you get 2 free drafts out of that and day 2 your first ever GP. That's cool.
Yeah.
And like, that I kind of agree with. It's like, nobody loses out in that situation. Yeah. The issue I have is when it's like, this person gets dicked over because you're helping someone else.
As long as it's entirely their decision, like... Because at the end of the day, the person making the decision of whether they're going to concede or not, like they're not being done a favor; they're doing the favor to the opponent, so to speak.
Yes, yeah.
So
well, that's the other thing I was going to say. Yeah, if I was like locked for a top 8 and I came up against like a good friend of mine who was playing for top 8, I'd concede because I want to help my friend out.
Yeah.
Not because of who's a big name or whatever. It's because they're friends with me and I want to specifically help them.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's definitely a weird topic.
That's a really weird one for me actually, because especially if it was my friend I came up against and I was playing for top 8, like I'd probably like I don't know if I'd do the same I'd maybe play it out if I was already in top 8 and they were wanting to top 8, but only because if I was in their position, I'd actually rather play it out than just get given the concede. And I think I feel like it's to do with, I mean, I think in that position anyway, I'd want to play it out most of the time to make it feel like I've earned my way there anyway.
The problem for me is as soon as you put prizes on the line, earning the way doesn't mean
no, I know.
Like,
but
bigger prizes, I'm in.
Yeah, but like...
And I mean, I don't think the other player should be annoyed at that. So let's say like
Yeah.
if you had if the difference between like me winning and so let's say you're in prizes, so you have 2 packs and I have 0 prizes. I wouldn't feel bad if you winning takes you like to 6 packs and then me, if I were to win, I only get 2 as well, and you stay at 2, right? If that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that doesn't really. I don't really care, you know. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice, but
yeah.
but I don't want
even if
the other
it's,
person to feel bad either.
Yeah.
even if it's entirely equal, if it's like one person's at 2 and the other's at 0, and that win would give either player an extra 2, like, it's still, you're not playing for anything in particular. But if it's like, but that's at the same time, if somebody, if we were in that situation, say, and somebody goes to me, I'll give you the win, I'm not going to turn it down. I'm not going to go, no, let's play it out. I'm going to be like, sure, I'll take 2 extra packs. Why not?
Sure.
Like, I'm not going to say no to more prizes in a tournament. I'm just like, that's the kind of person I am, I guess.
Well, I don't... I like prizes, don't get me wrong. I like winning. Well, I definitely like winning, because I think that's where it all stems from as well, because I'm just quite a competitive person. Which also means that if I don't win, or like in a more appropriate fashion, I guess, I feel like it's not really as... It feels a bit hollow. So I'd top cut and then be like... But I wouldn't. But I could have easily just not top cut here if I didn't get a free concede at the end or whatever. I
think the difference for me is when it's just playing for prizes and when it's playing for a top cut.
Fair.
Yeah.
Because if you top cut, well, you're still playing those games. You're still playing more games to win more stuff after that. You got one free concession to continue playing, and it's like basically I don't see any difference between not playing and then winning or losing in top 8, and then as opposed to playing the game that you're winning in and winning or losing there.
Yeah.
I don't see a difference between the two.
That's fair.
You're playing roughly the same number of games, unless you like win all of them or whatever. You're playing the same number of games, but in one of those situations, you get more stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
So just to draw this back again, there's one other big tournament controversy, which was at one of the Star City Games tournaments. Kent Ketter, one of the players who goes to a lot of the SCG Opens, part of Team Card Hoarder, on stream, live on camera, like on the stream, his opponent, he's playing Dredge, so a very graveyard-based deck. His opponent plays Rest in Peace, which, for clarity's sake, Rest in Peace says, when it enters the battlefield, exile all cards in all graveyards, and then if a card would enter a graveyard, exile it instead. His opponent plays Rest in Peace. Kent moves his graveyard to one side and then moves it back to where it was. They go to his upkeep. He goes to use a card in his graveyard. His opponent calls him out on it. They call a judge over. His opponent says what happened, explains the circumstances, and the judge rules in Kent Ketter's favour, saying his opponent had missed the trigger for the Rest in Peace. And so there are two sides to this. So Card Hoarder looked into it because they were like, we want to go over the accusations, because obviously people saw this on the stream, cut the clip, and went, holy shit, this is cheating, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And Card Hoarder have gone through it, and they've basically said that they've spoken to Kent Ketter about it. His explanation is that he did not cheat. He had no intention of deceiving the opponent by manipulating the graveyard. He basically wanted his opponent to... He went to move it, and then went, no, I shouldn't do that. I should make my opponent declare the trigger. His opponent did not see him move the graveyard because they were busy changing life total and sorting out lands. And their opponent did not declare the trigger. They didn't mention it during the upkeep. They didn't mention the fact that it was a trigger. And they didn't mention it to the judge, and so the judge ruled in Kent's favour. However, what Team Card Hoarder have said is that people have called it rules lawyering, and that they have that as a grey... They say that's fair. They agree with that. And there is nothing in their rules or like team policy about rules lawyering, but they're going to address that from now on because they don't want that to happen.
So, to me, I think this is the worst thing about competitive Magic that I've seen ever, from a not very experienced player's at least perspective, because this isn't
There's
just
definitely
like
been worse. I can tell you that.
I know, but just from everything that I've seen, like I really hate this because he knows exactly what Rest in Peace does. So he is waiting for. So he sees his opponent play Rest in Peace, and he's like, "Okay, cool. I should exile my graveyard, but I'm not going to." He's purposely going against the rules of the game and being like, "Nah, whatever tournament or whatever he was in, he was like, I would prefer to play this game incorrectly and be more likely for a win than to play the game." And I think that is such shitty behavior.
So, I mean, this goes back to what we were just saying, right?
Yeah.
About
exactly.
when do you as in when do you play for the win?
Yeah.
And when do you draw the line and go, no, I'm going to play this fair? The whole IDing into top 8 and all of that. It goes back to this again.
I
think
disagree.
if I was in a tournament,
I think it's a different aspect of it. It's the same thing, but different area.
Yeah. It's the same mentality, though. I think if I was in a tournament playing for big prizes, if I was like, if I was in like a GP or something, and so I can like get actual money from doing well in this, I would be. If I played, or if my opponent like had a trigger or whatever, I wouldn't mention it. I don't think I would. As soon as they mentioned it once, I think I would then start doing it every time.
Yeah, but this is like, I get that, right? I get that. Obviously, you're playing to win in that way, right? Or if there's some kind of trigger where it's like, oh, your opponent takes 2 damage at the beginning of the tournament, and if they don't say, okay, you take 2 now, sure. Rest in Peace reads, when it enters the graveyard, exile all cards. I keep saying graveyard for some reason. When Rest in Peace enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards.
Right.
That I don't think you can. Like
his opponent controls the Rest in Peace. It is his opponent's trigger to say it.
It says enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards. To me,
right.
I don't think it's like fair at all saying, look, okay, I play Rest in Peace. Okay, if the other guy didn't know, then fine, maybe. But he knows exactly what that is, so he's sitting there waiting, like, I'm not gonna say anything. This is a big tournament. Even though I know that it doesn't even say May. Missing May triggers or missing, like, damage or anything, like, incremental triggers.
May doesn't exist much anymore
sure.
because of that, but yeah.
Sure. But this kind of thing, I think this is so douchey. Like,
So, to some extent, I agree, but I don't think the issue is with Kent Ketter. I don't think the issue is with the player. I think the issue is with the judging.
I think it's, honestly, 50-50.
So in my opinion, it's rules lawyering, and I think that's a dodgy way to win, especially considering he moved his graveyard and then moved it back. Like, you've acknowledged that trigger, it should be gone. But the thing that I don't understand is they went to the opponent's upkeep, or they went to Kent's upkeep, and his opponent was like, no, you can't use your graveyard, it should be exiled. And they called a judge. The judge at that point should be going, okay, well, we can reverse the game state. Nothing, like, it doesn't matter when the cards were put into the graveyard, Rest in Peace exiles them anyway.
Yep.
Whether they were already there or whether they were added since, Rest in Peace entered the battlefield and has not left the battlefield. Those cards should be exiled.
Yes.
And the other thing is, nothing else had been played anyway, so nothing could have affected the Rest in Peace, nothing could have affected the graveyard. As far as I'm concerned, the cards should have been gone from the judges, not from Kent.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things where I think missed triggers as a whole are a really annoying rule in Magic at competitive level. It makes sense that they're there. Like, if you've missed a trigger X number of times, we don't know how far back it's gone, there's not a lot we can do, you missed it, tough luck.
Yeah.
Fair
in
enough.
those cases, sure.
But when you can reverse the game and go, actually, no, when this Rest in Peace was played, like, nothing's changed since then, exile your graveyard.
I mean, it's
done. Solved.
Yeah.
The game is playing out as it's meant to.
But
And as far as I'm concerned, that is a mistake in the rules and in the judging, or not the judging. The judging is with the rules, but the rules are flawed in that situation.
But I don't feel like this shouldn't be. This player shouldn't be having to go through that decision of, do I rules lawyer this? Do I, play?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Play wrong, because the rules are as the cards say most of the time, right?
Well, No, but this is the point. The rules right now say that if your opponent misses a trigger,
and I mean
they've missed a trigger.
Sure, but
and I don't agree with that.
isn't.
I think as far as you can reverse the game state, you should be doing that. And I disagree with the mentality that triggers are your responsibility and that's it.
Yeah, triggers should be something that happen. They aren't. Someone has to say something. It is something that happens.
Yes. It should be the kind of thing where you can call a judge over and go, "It's been this many, like, you know, we've done these plays since. We realised this was missed. What do we do?" And the judge will try to reverse it, and if they can't, they'll be like, "Okay, tough luck."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, the mistake here is with the rules and not with Kent's use of them. And I understand that, like, admittedly, I do not like the idea of, like, rules lawyering. I really don't like that. And I can kind of understand it more when it's playing for prizes. I will say that, because, like, I don't know, prizes mean a lot to me. Like,
I mean, sure, but
I think the game should not play like that.
right. He's not playing the game. He's playing a different game.
Exactly.
So,
well, more accurately, he's playing the game, but not the way that people actually want to
I mean,
play
well,
the
he's
game.
not. He's playing his altered version of Magic. And I'm saying his altered. You know, putting like a very heavy blame emphasis on him. He knows exactly what has happened. Like, and I don't think it's...
My point is that the rules say that he is able to do this and perfectly in his right to do this, and that is why he's got the win in that game, or why he's got the judge go in his favour. And that's what I disagree with. The rules are what
Sure,
need to
the
change
rules
here, not
the
his
rules are
actions.
bad, right?
He is playing to rules. It's like to use a really weird analogy. There's a thing in football where
offside, goal point.
if it happened a couple of years back where someone was about to score and a player just like handballed it off the line,
Yeah.
and they got sent off, but their team won the match. So who fucking cares?
yeah.
Like there was a penalty, the penalty was saved.
Kind of thing.
Move on. Yeah, and it's that sort of thing. It's like it's really sketchy rules.
Yeah.
But he's still playing within the rules.
Well, it's like the common one for that in football is like if the defender just takes someone out in the penalty box because they're the last man, they just take them out to stop them scoring. So there's a penalty, they'll probably get sent off, but it's better than a definite goal. Like
right, yeah, it's like you can
but
score.
it's really
score.
really sketchy. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's the point. Technically, that is allowed within the rules.
Yeah.
Whether it should be or not is the discussion.
No,
and that's what I would
no.
say with this. That's what I would say with this. This Kent Ketter played within the rules. And what he did, he had every right to do. It's rules lawyering, which I disagree with. I dislike that. But he is within his right to do this within the rules. I just don't think he should.
Yeah.
I just don't think it should be in the rules.
Yeah, I mean, so again, just to reiterate exactly what I've said before, like I think both parties are wrong. I don't think you should be playing to play the game like this. You should be playing to play the actual game and all around it. It's like tax evasion, right? Like what they're doing is technically legal, but yeah.
So
I'm gonna just, before we move on from like the rules discussion with this and like this idea, I do want to comment on one other thing that was mentioned. So I mentioned Team Cardhoarder put out a statement talking about this situation, and one of the things they very specifically said is they debated whether or not to add this to the discussion, but they really hate the witch hunt mentality, and they think it hurts the community more than it helps it. And very specifically, they said, from a sponsor's perspective, they're kind of putting themselves out and going, this is our statement regarding our player, but because there's this witch hunt, it doesn't matter whether the player is ruled to be in the right or not. Like, it doesn't matter whether the player is considered right or wrong. Because there's this whole mob mentality around them, there's already such a negative connotation, regardless of the actual outcome.
yeah.
And so they were basically saying, like, they really hate the mob mentality and the fact that people will use streams as a way to attack players for different things. And I can kind of agree with that. I think that there is a channel for these kinds of things, and sometimes it's good to bring it up in the community. The Eric Froelich article that he published and everyone just went, what the fuck is this? Like, that made sense to bring out in the community because it was already in a public space and it was always intended to be in a public space.
Yeah.
But the tournament game was something where, firstly, it wasn't an opinion, it was just someone playing the game. And the thing to do there is to bring it to the attention of, I guess, Wizards tournament staff and go, this has happened. What's the deal with this?
Fix your rules, Wizard, please.
Yeah, basically. Which, to be honest, I might actually push for now that I think about it, because, like, I hadn't really thought about it that much in depth, but yeah, the rules are the problem here. I don't understand why you can reverse... Because this is the thing, if you miss a trigger that is negative for you, you have to reverse it as much as possible to fix that.
Yeah.
And if you can't reverse it, then they'll just do a fucking whatever they can, like, makeshift job, just throw something together to make it as close as possible. Yeah. Why can't you do that for missed positive triggers?
I think that obviously the mentality there is that if it's positive for you, you should be keeping track. I kind of get
that doesn't work with the way the game works.
I kind of get why they've done it like that in the rules of positive ones. If you miss it, tough shit. If it's negative, no, go back, because it's basically it's punishing lax play in like against you, really.
You have to be clear about all your actions.
If you're not on
it prevents
top
you from
of your
being
play,
vague about details.
If you're not detailed with your play, if you're lax about it and you forget things, then you're going to get punished for it, basically. But I think the punishment is a little extreme in that it's so very one-sided that, like, I feel like, to be honest, as far as the spirit of the game would be healthier if positive triggers could, like, if any missed triggers could be wound back. Just winding
it
back
gets even
all
more
of them.
complicated. It gets even more complicated when you consider the fact that triggers don't actually have to be declared until they're relevant.
Yeah.
So there was a situation in Standard a year or two ago where it was Dragonlord Silumgar.
Yeah.
Whenever it attacks, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn.
Yeah.
You did not have to mention that unless they had a creature with 1 toughness.
Fair.
If they had a creature with 1 toughness, you have to specifically say, this kills those things.
Yep.
But if all their creatures are bigger than that, you can just attack. And then when they block, you're like, okay, those things die because they were 1 smaller. Because you don't have to mention it until it becomes relevant.
Yeah, I mean...
So that, like, adds another level of complexity to what shouldn't be a complex thing. It should just be, this always happens, do it.
Yeah. I feel like winding it back where possible is probably the fairest way to do it, just because, like, you are, like, people do forget things sometimes, right? You might not be the best, might not have the best memory. I don't. I have a terrible memory. I forget to mention things all the time. Which is a good job I don't play that, like, higher level. But, like, it's just, the game feels less genuine if you kind of miss triggers and then can't wind back for them. Like, I mean, because then, especially if the game then ends possibly differently to how it could have done because you missed like a positive trigger, then you're sat there thinking, well, I could have won that if, this had happened.
Yeah.
And I had played it, it's just I forgot about stating the trigger at the time, and it's one of those kind of shitty things, really.
Really weird way. Obviously, you can't miss triggers on Magic Online, because it tells you have a trigger, like choose a target. The way I see it, the tournament rules should be adjusted to make like the physical game as close to the digital game as possible.
Yeah, I can see that.
The only thing I disagree on there is time, because I think the time management system in Magic Online is flawed as all hell. But then I also think the same for tournament Magic, so either way.
What I think would be cool, right, and this would solve, I think, a lot of problems with turns, is there's some kind of like... So chess, right? When you're playing chess, you have the clocks.
Are you
going to
say chess clocks?
Something like that, where you click on something, and then that's you moving into the next phase.
So there are a couple of big problems with this that have come up. One of them is accessibility. Magic is very much a game that a lot of people can play. I can't remember the name of the player now, but there's a player who is mostly paralyzed.
Yeah.
And he goes to tournaments, and his mum
Yeah,
holds
yeah,
his
and
hand,
he
like
yeah.
the cards for him. I said his mum holds his hand, as in the hand of cards.
Yeah.
But like he basically like points at the cards he wants, or says like a number for where it is in the hand, and she plays the cards out and she draws cards for him, things like that. And if you have to do a chess clock in that, it then creates a lot of issues because those players like there's a player
Can he
local
talk?
to here. Yeah.
So, I mean, could you not, for argument's
But
sake,
there's
could you
still-
not
there
do
are still
like
issues with
next
it.
phase or just next for next phase?
You also have issues that not every tournament and every store is going to have access to that kind of equipment, and getting all of that is going to be a huge cost. So it's going to mean that
At least
Magic stores suddenly have this huge detriment to them that probably takes away a lot of game stores.
But for the big tournaments, at least, like this is the same thing I hate about football, right? When
they then have to be fixed to the table, because otherwise you will have people walking off with them, and that's like a really trivial
again. But this is for the big
tournament.
I mean this
no,
for the
and
big
I'm saying
tournaments.
In big tournaments though, people can just take a clock and walk off.
No, but like not even like for the when there's like 1,000 people in the pool, maybe even just for the top 16 or the top 32, or where these
eight.
conditions
top 8 would
top
be
8
where it would happen,
where you can have these much more heavily controlled conditions, and that's when this stuff really matters.
I mean, to be fair, top 8 is less of a scenario anyway because they don't have a time limit in top 8s.
Yeah.
The top 8 is just you'll have judges nearby who monitor to make sure you're not playing slowly. But as long as you're not being warned for slow play, you've got as much time as you want to finish the game.
But I mean, that's why I'm saying this is more for like your showing, it's tracking your phases, right? So rather than having it just like an actual chess clock where it's just time,
so
being able to show phases, because then that will also remind you of triggers and everything like that.
But here is the other big problem with it, is that there are accepted shortcuts in Magic.
Yeah.
Like, if I say, okay, go to attacks, like I play a spell and then go, okay, go to attacks. That implies I am in my main phase.
I'm going to attacks. Do you want to do anything?
However, I am moving. Saying go to attacks in just that implies both players pass priority to beginning of combat, and then during the beginning of combat, my opponent does something. Or my opponent has priority. That is the point we're at. And that is all implied with that. Now, technically, there's opponent can act in end of main phase. And if your opponent wants to act in your main phase, they have to specifically say there, during the end of your main phase, do this.
Yeah.
If you have the chess, or I might just go, okay, play this past turn.
I mean,
there has to be something in there.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
like
but that's easily doable, I think.
Not with chess clocks, because then you have to stop for every past priority.
No, but you can just, so there literally can just be like a thing where there's like an arrow, a left and right arrow key, right? And you just press the right arrow key, right arrow key, right arrow key, right arrow key. There's like maybe a digital clock-esque display, which the opponent can always see at all times and you always see.
Okay,
and
that
you're
is
just pressing a button.
That is just way too complicated.
I don't think it is. This
anything
is
to
just
be installed.
pressing right.
No. You're saying create an entirely custom interface to do something that isn't even that good for tournaments. Like, the current time system for tournaments, the only issue it has is that control mirrors become really.
But I'm not saying this
constrained.
I'm not. So when you said chess clocks, I'm not saying the issue is like time, right? Time, I don't think is the problem here. I mean it for the distinct movement through phases and and the triggers thereof.
No. But even then, the issue with triggers isn't moving through phases. The issue with triggers
helps remind you of that. At least in my opinion.
Take the rest in peace example. If I go play rest in peace, past turn, at no point in there moving through phases is there any point where I'm going to go, hold on, that triggers when it comes in.
Sure, I guess.
Like there are certain ones, don't get me wrong, like beginning of upkeep, sure. But generally, you just go, okay, past turn during your upkeep, do this. If you're going to remember it there, you're going to remember it when you look at a thing that says upkeep.
Sure.
Like, I don't think it solves the problem. I think it creates more problems than it solves.
I don't think it creates more problems because
it creates issue with time and
I am on the fence.
Priority.
Just to
I think
create
you literally just have an arrow that you just tap through, and it's not like you like tap. Do you want to do anything? Tap. Do you want to do anything? Like You know, like Duels of the Planeswalkers and Magic Online or whatever, right? This is literally like a very, very physical, still a physical way of doing it. You're just tapping an arrow to show that you are moving through the phases. Also, just to...
I don't think that's any different to how it is now. I don't think that's any different. Why is going, okay, I'm going to press this to say that I've moved to my main phase,
Clarity.
any different from me saying, okay, go to main phase?
Clarity.
It's exactly the same.
I think this would be clear. But, I mean, I think that's that. To go back to that guy, I feel like he is as in the wrong as the rules are. Because he very knowingly... Because, I mean, he moved the deck. He moved his graveyard, and then back. Right? That's really...
I agree that, yes. And I hate that because it is, like I say, it's the rules lawyering, very specifically, and I don't like that at all. But, like I say, he is... At the very least, he is entitled to do that.
But
even if... Well, obviously the community disagreed, because there was a hell of a backlash against him for it. And that's kind of... I'm almost playing devil's advocate here. I don't think he was the one at fault. I think the rules were.
I think he's at fault because
the community very much disagrees with me.
Yeah, I guess I'm with the community because I feel like he knowingly did this, and I don't think the game should ever be at the point where someone will knowingly do that. Because then I think you're not playing the game. You are rules.
I think it's really, really shitty. But, and I'm sure there was a thing at one point where, like, if either player acknowledged the trigger, they had to do it. But apparently not. In which case, I'm guessing he didn't mention if that is a thing still, I'm guessing he didn't mention the fact that he moved his graveyard to the judge. But either way, I think the rules are at least more at fault than he is. He is at fault, but not as much as the rules of the game are there, I think.
I think they're just as bad as each other.
So, we've gone over time, but very briefly, I just want to quickly touch on the Commander decks, because they came out fairly recently.
For color, yay!
Yeah, I am probably not the person to be talking about Commander stuff, but for color stuff, yay! Like, there's some cool abilities and mechanics that I'm glad have come back or been created. There's some really interesting stuff here. I'm a little disappointed with the actual 4-color generals.
They are not as big or impactful as I thought they would be, or as sort of crazy as they thought they'd be.
That, yes, they aren't. So I had this argument with someone the other day, and I said they're not build around. EDH is very much, or Commander, sorry, is very much a build around format. As in, you pick a general and you go, okay, how do I build a deck around this thing? And these cards don't do that. For example, like there's the artifact one, which is just sacrifice some artifacts, get a bunch of very generic abilities.
Yeah,
and like...
I mean, I guess the point of that is like, oh, well, you can be a token deck, but you also have some artifact synergy, and there's like also flyers, I guess. Like that's two...
Yeah, you can do some combo stuff with it, and you can do some value stuff with it, but more than anything, she's there as a way of just sacrificing artifacts.
Yeah.
That's kind of unique. There's... The one that I really like is the one that's not black, which is 4 mana 2/8. During your end step, you draw a card, and then each player can put a land from their hand into play.
Yeah.
And then each opponent who didn't draws a card. So basically, during your end step, you can draw a card and then play a land, and your opponents can choose to play a land or draw a card.
That's cool.
And I think that's a really cool design. Yeah. And it really suits the not black. But like the proliferate one, I was actually saying a couple of weeks back, like I really wanted proliferate to be a mechanic, and then they revealed the proliferate 4-color commander, and I was just like, that's really disappointing. Like it's just okay during your end step proliferate, doesn't do anything with counters itself.
Yeah,
just has a bunch of abilities. It's just an efficient beta, and don't get me wrong, it's a very good efficient beta.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it itself. It's just
yeah.
I definitely agree with you that it's not a very... It's proliferate, cool, but it doesn't really play with that. It's just proliferate
the argument I had the other day, like I say, I argued with someone who works with Wizards about this, and I said it's
of course
not very build around, and they were like, sure it is. It's exactly build around. You can build it in so many different ways. And I was like, no, that's the problem. It's too generic. It doesn't direct you. You don't build around this commander. You don't go, I'm going to build a proliferate deck. I guess I'm going to play this, and so I'll put in proliferate stuff. You go, okay, I want to build a planeswalker deck. Cool, I'll use this then. And that's not the way I see the format working. I think the thing that would change it for me is if it had the inexorable tide ability, which instead of being at the beginning of your end step proliferate is whenever you cast a spell proliferate. Yeah. And I think that would make that much better. Much more build around, much more accessible, and much more just interesting, basically.
Well, I was going to say,
yeah.
I guess whether you describe it as build around does depend on how literal you take the phrase build around, because you are building around it, obviously. But I mean, if you take it very literally, everything's more like, or most commanders are going to be build around. Like, you're going to be like, I've got a commander, what synergizes with it? It's not going to be... I guess what you're looking... What your issue with it is it's not interactive, right?
No. The way I see it is, more often than not, Commander is a format where you pick a commander and you build a deck around it. Yeah. And not the other way round.
Okay, yeah.
These commanders are not build around. You build a deck, and then you attach this commander to
it. Okay, yeah.
Like, I go, I'm going to build an artifacty combo deck. Oh, I guess it's 4 color, so I guess I'll use Breya. Or, I see
what you mean.
I've got this general that's a 4 color proliferate general, but I'm just going to build a planeswalker deck and then just cut the red out of it.
So what you're
and then this is good.
So what you're saying is, I'm going to build a commander deck that is this. I guess this commander works well for it, so I'll use this commander.
Yes.
Whereas I prefer it the other way around, where you're like, I like this legendary creature. Can I make a deck?
The way I see commander working more often than not is that people go, here's a legendary I want to build.
I think more though, that's a problem with it being 4 color, because 4 colors is a lot of utility to it. It means you can get into so many different colors, and I don't feel it's strictly fair saying, oh, I want to make a planeswalker deck, what colors do I not want to bother with? Oh, I don't want to bother with red. Okay, cool, I'll pick this one. No,
but it's more that you start off going, okay, I'm going to build a planeswalker deck, and then you go, okay, so I'll play this general. And not, I want to play this general. Oh, cool. So I will build this deck. You start with the deck premise, not the general. And that's the thing that's weird to me. The 2-color partner ones are really good. I will say that. I think the 2-color ones do a much... I think they kind of suit the format more, I guess, is the way I would put it.
I feel like some of the 2-color ones are cards you definitely put into those decks. They don't really have, like, much cool stuff to them, like I
think they do. I think some of them are really interesting.
Yeah, but so the blue-white one, the Ishtai Ojusai Dragon Speaker, whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Okay, yeah, that's really boring.
Right? Obviously, they're not all like that, but I think...
No. But, like, on the flip side, so this is the thing. You've got 5 4-color ones, and I would say one of them is interesting, maybe 2.
I'd say,
maybe the Cascade one.
The Cascade
one is cool.
Otherwise,
it's just the 2/8.
I like the 2/8. Sasky's okay.
The others are very generic, like hit players and hit them again, woo, or hit someone again. Proliferate in end step, but it's like they're all very vague. They don't push you in a certain direction. They're not like encouraging you to really build a deck around them.
Again, I think that's a problem with being 4-color though, because
whereas something like Silas Wren, I think, does. Something like Kydel or Kydel, the Chosen of Krufix, that one.
Yeah.
That does. Even like Thrasios, the Triton hero, that one, like, scry 1, then reveal the top card. If it's a land, put it into play tapped, and if not, draw it.
As a side note,
that's
I think...
a really cool ability.
Yeah, I think they should... I mean, I guess they can't, but I think the community definitely should come together and try and get more... Think of some of the weaker legendary creatures, they should have, like, an addendum partner thing to them. As an aside.
I think that would be way too complex, but yes.
No, but just, like, at least within playgroups being like, hey, can I partner this with this?
Can do that.
I think that'd be...
that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
Like the white-black Merfolk. I think no, the white-blue Merfolk. Like I think he would partner well with the green-blue Merfolk, and then you have green in your Merfolk. Even though I'm not sure there's really any good green Merfolk, but there you go.
There's probably some stuff you can do with it.
Yeah.
Collected company.
Yeah, like my bird deck, for example. I would love having access to black, for example. Like I really want, because there's lots of black cool birds that I would like to play with, but I can't because white blue. That's the only way to do it. So if I could somehow find a way to partner, getting some black in there, I think that'd be sweet.
No, yeah, I think partner as a mechanic is a really, really cool idea. I think there's apparently there's like 105 combinations of partner generals.
Yeah, I think it's the partner stuff is, while some of them aren't super interesting, it's definitely a really good idea. And I'm gonna be honest, all the cards that they've added for this commander, I think are doing a lot of good to it. Like there's a lot of really interesting cards which are super fun to play with a bunch of people. Like the new mechanic, like you were mentioning. Like if you're playing with more people, Undaunted, things cost less.
I'm not a big fan of that because it's just kind of, I don't know. I guess it's just a bit plain.
I mean, it's plain, but I think it works very well because
it works. It's just not my kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because if you're playing a game with like 6 people, you're going to need more, board wipes or whatever, and having that
you
on
need
stuff.
them earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of cards in here that are just very much my type of thing. I like the one that's
Migratory Route. Do you mean Migratory Route? Right. That's the one.
Is that going to be a terrible one? Which one's that?
Create 4 1/1 white bird creature tokens.
Of course you like that. Why wouldn't you?
Because it makes birds.
Grip of Pharisis is a really cool cool card.
Yeah.
3 mana, gain an equipment, and then make a 0/0 attached to it.
I think that is one of my favorite cards actually. I
also like that the artwork's holding a sword of body in mind.
It is.
That's like a nice touch. I really like Magus of the Will, putting Yawgmoth's will on a creature. All right, cool. Yeah, sure, I'll take that. Goblin Spymaster is just a really cool card. Making each opponent get a creature that forces their creatures to attack is
super
weird
cool
and interesting, and that's
Selfless Squire I think is super interesting.
Yeah, I can see that one. That's of course you like that one as well. So to put this into perspective, John has a deck that is entirely dedicated to saying your creatures take no combat damage.
Yep. Selfless Squire does good work there.
It's quite good with that.
Yep.
But there's some very interesting cards here. I like Deep Glow Skate as a card just because it's very cool.
Yeah.
It's just a really fun, interesting, cool card, and that's the kind of thing I like.
It puts more feather tokens on things.
For fuck's sake!
It's a bird EDH tech thing. That's an inside bird joke.
Kanji, what is it even called?
Airy Keeper. Thank you. How could you not remember that? Come on. The one thing I wish they'd done more is they'd done at least one more of each of the 4 color things, because reading the article that they posted on it, they were like, oh, this was super hard, and obviously it's going to be super hard, but I felt like if they had one of the ones which are just costs 4 of the mana, right? That's fine. So the current ones, all of them are 4 mana, 1 of each of the colors that you have. But I would like to see a 3
hybrids.
Well, maybe not even hybrids, just 3 and then 4, right? Having these big cards rather than these relatively toned down. I want to see one of the commanders costing 8 mana in total, and then having that 4 color crossover, I think would be really cool because the amount of crazy things they could do with that.
This might be a really weird thing to call out, but I don't know if Magic's formatting allows for 5 different...
I know.
Oh, no, it obviously allows for 5. It wouldn't allow for 6, would it? No. Never mind, ignore me.
But that as an example, right? Because obviously you're limited by card text, but...
Yeah, Yidris could not have another,
or, another, 2 abilities.
It's they have squished that name perfectly into that space.
Yeah.
Kaneos and Tiro just have smaller fonts.
Yes. But you get what I mean. I would have liked to have seen a bigger, splashier,
I could see it.
Imagine if you had Atraxa, but she also costs 5 more mana. At the beginning of every single step, proliferate, right?
Well, if it was 4 and then or she was 3 and then those 4 colors, and it was the whenever you cast a spell proliferate, and like at the beginning of each end step, for each, or like put an extra counter on each permanent, like
some crazy stuff like
basically
that.
the deep blow skate thing.
Yes.
I guess that would be a lot of text, but
yeah, and obviously there would have to be a balancing act with that. But I think that would have been a super cool way of doing that.
Splashy 4-color one. Yeah.
Obviously they've done a cool job with that enough with the partners, but
Yeah. Cool. I think
we Gucci.
that's probably about it.
Sweet.
So just to close off, World Magic Cup this weekend.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to take 3 decks for Modern,
3.
keeping in mind obviously the restrictions with numbers of cards and like metagames and stuff, which 3 decks do you go for?
Right. I'd go Merfolk, because it's monocolor, and I think it's sort of just powerful in general.
Yep, I agree on that one.
Either mono red or red white burn, because again, you can slim it down, you can trim a lot of stuff that maybe you don't always have, so maybe you can put paths in another deck. Then the third deck, maybe some kind of, not Naya, some kind of other deck. What? Abzan.
That would be the 3 colours you are less on, at least.
And then, from the white, which you would normally run in the burn, the paths, again, you can donate can go to the Abzan, and all the more techie stuff maybe go to the Abzan. Something like that.
That's pretty similar to the list I'd go with. I think I'd be going for Merfolk, Scred Red, and Abzan.
I have very little opinion on this, as I don't keep up with Modern.
Fair enough.
What decks would you take? And I'm sat here thinking, well, can I name 3 Modern decks first? without just making stuff up? I'd take White Black Angels. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you go Mono White Seance.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
No, that competes for cards.
And then Mono Green Permeating Mass.
Yeah. Obviously, the mono green fighting permeating mass.
And we're done here, aren't we? Thanks, guys.
More or less.
Thanks for listening, everyone. This has been fun.
Wow, that was abrupt. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Permeating.
We're not having any more fucking permeating mass conversations. That's why.
But
it's not happening again.
To be fair,
I swear to God.
To be fair, this is the first time it's actually happened. I don't know what you're on about. This is the first time it's happened in the podcast.
We've just. Yeah.
This has come out.
We had an episode months ago that got cut. That's the context here. But no more permeating mass. It is not going to see Modern play. It is not seeing Standard play. It is not a good card. It isn't even good in Limited.
I think Vintage, you'll probably see a lot of play soon, I think.
It would have seen Limited play if I'd got it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And on that delightful note, thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Next episode will be Tuesday, which will be a games one.
Yes.
We'll probably be talking about a lot of Hearthstone stuff, some more Nintendo Switch. I've got some League of Legends to talk about. I imagine you guys have some Blizzard games to talk about.
Is this like actual proper league or like U-League?
No, like actual tournament league.
Oh, right, okay.
But yeah, that's all coming on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.